Tongue-tied, a memoir. Text elements, genre is a memoir. Text structure, main is the chronological sequence. Embedded is the narrative description. Temporal sequence, cause and effect, problem solution. We have our nonfiction text features, table of contents, headings, photos, captions, sidebars, and quotations. My discovery. Until I moved from India to America at age 6, I had never known another person who stuttered. I wasn't even aware that I stuttered. All that changed when my father picked us up at the Cincinnati airport after our long trip from Mumbai. I didn't really remember the tall, slender man who caught me up in his arms that day. My father was an engineer who had moved to America to pursue his studies when I was still a toddler. Now, my mother, my brother, Mohan, and sister Suman and I had come to join him. I noticed right away that my father talked funny. He prolonged certain sounds, he repeated syllables. His S's were hissing snakes, his R's revving engines. I struggled not to laugh. I didn't realize he was stuttering. I also didn't realize that I sounded even worse, like a car backfiring. Here I am, the youngest, with Mohan, Suman, and my mom. This is in India before we moved to America to be with my dad. My father must have noticed that I talked funny too, because all the way to our new home, he tried to help me. When I got stuck on a word, he said to let it go, or speak slowly, or breathe. But I had so much to tell him. I didn't want to slow down, with 1,000 stories clamoring to get out. Crowded into the back seat of my dad's Volkswagen Beetle, with Suman and Mohan, I became aware of my stutter for the first time. From that day on, stuttering was my affliction. It set me apart and made me unhappy. What I didn't know then was that what seemed like a terrible affliction can turn out to be a gift. What is stuttering? When the flow of speech is broken up by repetitions, more, or prolongations, more, or complete blocks, no sound. A speaker is said to stutter or stammer. Chatterbox. My stutter soon became a topic of conversation and speculation. Her brain works faster than her mouth, said my mother. She has a nervous personality, said my family friend. So what? Julius Caesar was also a stutterer, said Mohan. Moses too, I piped up. With my family, I was talkative, sputtering through ideas and opinions. When the words got stuck in my throat, I stamped my feet and clutched my neck. Sometimes I smacked Mohan and Suman to stop them from finishing my sentences, but they didn't get angry. Mohan grabbed my flailing fist. Stop hitting Chatterbox, he said. I stuck my tongue out at him, but the tension had gone. Famous people who stutter: Emily Blunt, actress, Mark Anthony, Shaquille O'Neal, Lewis Carroll, Alan Robinowitz, Alan Turing, Winston Churchill, and King George. In moments of extreme frustration, I wrote notes. I remember the day I discovered a huge stack of papers in my father's office and scribbled all over them. There was so much paper. I made paper airplanes until Mom called us for supper. Then my father came home and saw the mess. My thesis, he shouted. Who did this? His anger froze my words in my throat. I said the names that came most ready. Mohan and Suman. When they were punished for what I did, I felt awful. I crouched down next to my bed and wrote sorry with a picture of an airplane on the wall. Then it was my mother's turn to shout, no taking Baba's papers and no scribbling on the walls, but I couldn't help it. I found myself drawn to this new way of expressing myself. I was often scolded after that for writing on stolen paper and drawing on walls. My siblings were nice to me, even though I took my frustration out on them. Here I am with Suman next to the family car, our trusty VW Bug. Speech therapy. If home was a place where my stutter was accepted, school was just the opposite. On the playground, kids taunted me. Spit it out. Cat got your tongue, they sneered. I fought back, not with words, but with my fists. I was stuttering so spectacularly and getting into so many fights that the school contacted my parents. They agreed to send me to speech therapy. My father escorted me to my first session with Miss Jenny after school. Her classroom was littered with toys. I made a beeline from a toy farm, for a toy farm, which had tractors, trucks, people, animals, and even little bales of hay. I don't remember Dad leaving. I was too busy playing. I think Miss Jenny was the first grown-up who asked what I wanted to do, what I thought about the things. She had me read aloud, tell her stories, play acts with clothes from her dress-up box. Unlike other teachers, she never shushed or hurried me. My school picture from my year in America. My sessions with Miss Jenny seem more like playtime than speech therapy, but I've never forgotten what she taught me. During our sessions, Miss Jenny introduced me to 3 techniques I still use to be fluent. First, I learned to speak in a breathy way. It kept the airflow moving through my tensed up throat. It sounded unnatural, but it gave me more control over the stuttering. Second, I slowed down my speech, stretching out the sounds just like my dad did. The slower way of speaking was also unnatural, but it helped me get some of the words out. And third, I stuttered much less when I practiced what I wanted to say. I also discovered something else in my sessions. I never stuttered while singing. Too bad I couldn't sing my way through life. What causes stuttering? Brain scans showed that people who stutter process speech and language differently than most people. Scientists aren't sure exactly why this happens. About half the stutterers have a close relative who stutters, like my father and me. So scientists believe that genetics play a role. Sticks and stones. A year after moving to America, my mother, Suman, and I moved back to India. I had a slight stutter, an American accent, and no working knowledge of Hindi, the national language of India. I had to repeat first grade. It didn't take long for my new schoolmates to discover my affliction. It happened at recess when we were playing a game with sticks. Someone asked me a question, and the jumbled Hindi and English words got stuck in my throat when I tried to answer. The player hits the gilly short stick with a danda long stick to make it fly through the air. The kids screamed with laughter and chased me around with sticks, shouting I didn't understand. I covered my ears and ran without thinking. Suman grabbed my hand and led me home, shouting a few things herself. After that, my self-confidence plummeted. My stuttering soared. Practically overnight, I forgot all the techniques I learned in speech therapy. I stopped trying to speak at school and instead became an observer. I listened, studied hard, and kept my opinions to myself. The other girls thought I was unfriendly and stuck up because I lived in America, but they were wrong. If only they knew how much I longed to speak like them, how carefree they were, tossing words into the air. Writing became my refuge. I wrote on any scrap of paper I could find. I remember writing this in the margin of a notebook. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I think I knew even then it was a lie. Words can hurt. Finding my voice. From that day on, I pushed myself. I practiced sentences in my head, scanning ahead for troublesome sounds, and then checking the dictionary for alternatives. People thought I was a show off for using big or obscure words, but I didn't care. When a teacher asked questions, I raised my hand silently, silently rehearsing my answers before speaking aloud. I spoke slowly the way I'd been taught in speech therapy. People still tried to finish my sentences, and I would fly into rage. I discovered that anger made me fluent. Too bad I couldn't shout my way through life. Doing homework, I worked hard on to get control of my stutter and do well in school. I memorized another long poem, The Pied Piper of Hamelin, and recited it in a contest. I did it to challenge myself. I even entered an elocution contest, choosing to recite The Pied Piper of Hamelin. I began with a sputter, but by the time I got to rats, I'd found my rhythm. I didn't win, but stuttering through 303-line poem was a victory for me. I was learning not to be afraid. In 5th grade, I won 6 out of 7 academic prizes. Of course, I was proud, but my proudest moment was saying thank you on stage in front of everyone without stuttering. Later, when we went to celebrate, I decided to order what I really wanted instead of what I knew I could ask for without stuttering. I would like an orange soda. I tasted success with a deliciously cold orange soda instead of cola. A lifelong challenge. One day in 7th grade, I bumped smack into another girl, and I hurried in from lunch, which I ate alone. Excuse me, I said breathlessly. The girl Rushi dismissed my apology and instead surprised me by asking for help with a math problem. I noticed that I hardly stuttered at all while I was helping her. Rushi invited me to eat with friends the next day. It was very cheerful sitting on the stone wall with the other girls, and I found myself joining in with the halted speech. Before long, I was tutoring several of the girls in math, science, and English. They got used to the funny way I spoke, along with my arm flailing and foot stomping. I began to laugh at myself with them and began to relax, thinking I would grow out of it. But I was wrong. I knew now that stuttering never goes away completely. I've only learned to mask it. Stress is a huge trigger. So is adventure and excitement. Even the writing of this book has increased my stuttering, though it's worth it because I get to share my story. To this day, I use the techniques I learned in speech therapy to control my stutter. When I get stuck while reading aloud, I stop and breathe, start the sentence over. It can be very embarrassing to stutter when I'm leading a writing workshop, but I immediately own up to having a speech problem and continue at a slower rate. I find that letting people know I'm vulnerable helps them open up to me too. If you know someone who stutters, listen to him or her as you would listen to anyone else. Be patient and try not to be alarmed. If you are relaxed, your friend will relax and be able to speak more fluently. Working in the lab at the Max Planck Institute for Plant Breeding in Cologne, Germany in 1996. I still stutter once in a while, but I breathe and move on. Although I still sometimes wish I didn't stutter, I no longer see it as an affliction. It's just part of who I am, like the gap between my front teeth or the curiosity about how the world works. And while I would not wish a stutter upon anyone, I am thankful for it. Stuttering forced me to develop the qualities that are necessary for scientists. The ability to observe, to listen, and pay attention. I might not become a scientist if I hadn't stuttered so severely in my childhood. I might not have become a writer either without my stutter to push me in the direction. When I couldn't talk to anyone, I turned to books for company. The desire to express myself led me to write. By reading and writing a lot, I developed a great love for words. Now I'm writing my way through life.